give me one shot here on a blue chip stock team. Believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back, the Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. It's the Draft Deck NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Podcast feed. My name is Corey Tulliba, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, what's going on, man?
All is good. All is good. All is well. Excited to be back. I don't even know what I'm saying, Corey. I'm just ready to rock. I feel things are getting busier and busier, in a good way, of course. But I just feel like a lot is going on and there's a lot for us to do. But now's the time to lock in and to keep pushing. So exciting times.
Very exciting times in the world of basketball. We have the NBA playoffs. We have draft season. The lottery order is set. We have a lot of prospects to cover and a little time to do it. So let's not waste any more time here. Let's get into the player that we are covering today, which is Mr. Anthony Black, Arkansas guard, 19.4 years old on draft night. He measured in at about 6'7" in shoes, 185 pounds with a reported 6'7.5" wingspan. Averaged 12.8 points per game in 34.9 minutes per game, 5.1 rebounds, 3.9 assists to 3 turnovers, 2.1 steals, and 0.6 blocks. Shot 45.3% from the floor, 30.1% from three on 2.6 three-point attempts per game, 70.5% from the free throw line on 5.3 free throw attempts per game. True shooting percentage of 54.9, PER 17.2, BPM of 6.7. Preseason stock price, ESPN had him at 15, SB Nation had him at 10, Basketball News at 14, The Athletic at 16, Tankathon at 11, No Ceilings at 11, Sports Illustrated at 16. Average price of 13.3, came in at 14th on the Draft Deck IPO. Currently, ESPN has him at 8. The Athletic had him at 8. Tankathon at 8. Bleacher Report at 9. The Ringer at 6. No Ceilings had him at 10. And Swish Theory at 8. Average stock price at 8.1, came in at 8 on the April Draft Deck update. So his stock price has risen throughout the season. That leads me to my next question, Albert, which is, as always, is Anthony Black stock priced too high, too low, or is it just right?
If he's right around 8, then I'm going to say that his stock price is just right. The reason why is I have him at 9. So for him to be at 8 overall, in terms of an average, that makes sense to me. He's a guy that, as you've mentioned, he has risen up a lot of boards and is gaining a lot of popularity. We're going to talk about why, break down his game, talk about the nitty gritty. But him being at 8 point whatever feels just right to me. And I actually think he might go in that range. So I'm pretty happy with it.
I have him at 8. So, I agree. I think that it's just right. I could see him going in this range at 8 as well. I mean, obviously the Washington Wizards are a team that he's going to be linked to just because I think he fits so well next to a Bradley Beal. And that's a team, that needs that kind of lead guard to organize things. So, he'll be linked there. I could also see him going earlier. And, shout out to friend of the program, Jeremy Wu, who came on this show earlier in the draft cycle and had him going, I believe, 3rd at the time.
Yeah.
It was really high. It was really high. And, I think it got, I don't know about the whole draft world in general. I don't know if it got them thinking, but I think it got us thinking, right? Yeah. Because, his reasoning was kind of like 6'7" guard, gets downhill, plus positional size, feel, versatility on both ends. And basically, he does a lot of similar things to a guy like Amen Thompson, who's been linked to number 3 for a while as well. I know, the consensus thinking is Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller. We know weird things happen on draft night. So that leads us into this next segment of ours that we do. And if you had $10 to invest in Anthony Black, Amen Thompson, and Cason Wallace, how would you invest your $10?
Wow. Okay. This is a good one. The Cason Wallace is a little bit of a curveball, Corey, but you're good at that. Clayton Kershaw. Okay. On my board, I have Anthony Black at 9, Cason Wallace at 12. And Thompson ended up at 17, actually. Okay. Now, look, man, recently, Corey, can I just say recently, I've been talking about my board. And as I look at my board, I feel like I can be a little controversial with where I place some guys. But I just want to say for our listeners out there, there is not even an ounce in me that wants to be like hot takey at all. Like I genuinely feel good about where I've placed these guys so far. So I want to throw that out there. In terms of my $10, we'll do this. I'm going to give. I just have to kind of go off of my board and how I did things here. I'll go into the quarter system today. I'm going to do $550 to Anthony Black. Jesus. Okay, $550 to Anthony Black, $250 to Cason Wallace, and $2 to Amen Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with 5 to Ant Black, and then I'm going to split the 250 between Amen and Cason. And look, I know that you're not a hot takey guy. I think if you had listened to our pods in the preseason, you'd know that we've been skeptical of, I guess, the high rankings. I have him a little bit higher than you do, but I'm skeptical of Amen. He's a guy I've seen up close a bunch of times. I saw him at a pro day. I've seen him play in actual gameplay. We've watched all of the film. The OTE stuff is, it's hard to evaluate in a lot of ways because it is not just new, but the level of competition, it's really hard. And I think you can make it all negative and say like, oh, they're a little bit older against this competition, but then also they're playing with younger guys, which is going to make them, not look as good in certain ways too. So I think that you can go either way there, but ultimately I think Ant Black offers a lot of the same things that Amen does. I think he's an underrated athlete. If you run a BART query for guys who kind of get downhill and make plays, assist percentage over 20, free throw rate 50, dunks made 20. Freshman, you got Ben Simmons, John Wall, Anthony Black. That's you could look at Ben Simmons now and John Wall now and say that list, but those guys when they were young and coming out, like those guys, they were really good players in their prime. All-star, all NBA level guys. Now I don't think Ant Black is necessarily on their level. It's why I don't have them at the top of the draft, but there's a lot of similarities. So I think he's an interesting guy, and if you want to go the safer route, because you maybe don't trust Amen's shot as much as maybe you buy the form more on Ant Black shot, I think he offers a lot of similar things, but he's just a tiny bit safer. And if he's at 8, you can make an argument that Amen could be lower. So let's get into the scattering report. And I think with Anthony Black, the place that you want to start with him is probably the playmaking, right? Like this is what he's known for. He is just a really, really smooth playmaker, has really great feel on the court. So I think we have to start there.
That sounds great. I was kind of, a small part of me was expecting maybe a curveball and you being like, let's start with the shooting. And then this would have been a really interesting sounding pod. But I'm with you, Corey. Okay, passing, great place to start. Before we even get into the passing, though, Corey, I did want to mention that you wrote about him earlier this season.
Yeah.
I think it was like March, or I don't even remember.
Yeah, it
But
wasn't that long ago,
it wasn't that long ago. Yeah.
it might have been in March. I don't know that, like,
Yeah.
but which isn't that long ago, right? I don't know.
The months are all kind of mashing together at this point. I don't know what today is, but I actually really, really loved your article, and I read it again on purpose, just because as we were doing this deep dive, I wanted to kind of keep in mind of some of the things that you brought up, right? And to be fair, actually, well, not for me to be fair, but I think your article was fair. I think obviously we try to be positive and highlight the strengths of these players, but also, there are things for them to work on. And that's why initially I thought we were going to talk about the shooting first, but I like that we're doing passing. And the thing with Ant Black that stuck out to me, number one, is that he's a pass first guy. You mentioned some of the names before, guys like a John Wall, guys like a Ben Simmons, right? In your piece, you even mentioned like Alonzo Ball type of guy, but he truly is, and you mentioned Halliburton as well, but he truly is a pass first guy. And if you are going to pull up Ant Black on YouTube and you watch just the highlights, I think sometimes there are players where highlight videos can truly undersell the nuance and the greatness of their ability. And I think Ant Blank is one of those guys, because he clearly had some highlight worthy passes throughout the season. But the beauty about Ant Black's game is that he's really good at the mundane stuff as well. He's good at making the extra pass. He's really good at getting a pass in terms of accuracy, getting a pass to a shooter's pocket where they want to catch the ball and where they're effective. I think there are small details that he really does well that I think could be kind of lost in the sauce sometimes when you just watch highlight videos. So I'm not trying to slight anybody that catches up with highlight videos. I mean, we make them ourselves, like the one you're playing right now that shouts to Tyler Rucker for putting together all the time. But I did want to mention, first off, with Ant Black, that there is a beauty in the simple stuff that he does consistently on the court.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's that. I mean, he has the feel. He plays 0.5 basketball, and we'll show some of that stuff in clips when we go in depth as we are now. But you mentioned, in my article, one of the things I've been trying to do with my writing this year for this draft cycle is not just give a scouting report, because I think sometimes when we do that, it could be like, how's this working at the college level? And that's not what we're evaluating necessarily. We're evaluating what these guys are going to be, or potentially could be, as professionals. So in a lot of ways, I look for the NBA skills and try to project those forward instead of only, just breaking down strengths and weaknesses, because some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses might not matter at the next level, but what are the strengths and weaknesses that do matter? So I've been, looking for clips and trying to figure out, I'm a comps guy. What guys do they play like? And I think, with Ant Black, you see, a lot of other NBA players. And, this clip here, he's getting downhill, comes off a double screen. And this is just a beautiful, beautiful pass that we see from NBA guys. So, comes off, reads the rotation, and perfectly hits that weak side shooter. And one of the things with Arkansas this year, if you watch, they didn't have a lot of shooting, a lot of floor spacing. The fact that he's able to manipulate defenses, get downhill so consistently was really impressive. And this is a play that, every good NBA guard is going to need in their bag. You have to be able to read that weak side corner and find your shooters. He does a terrific job here. And what I love about this pass so much is how the ball floats in the air. It's like Henry Rowan Gardner in Rookie of the Year. Like, it's just so soft. It's easy to catch. It's right in the shot pocket. And it just makes it easier on your shooters when you have guys who can make these kinds of reads. Now, you mentioned a Tyrese Halliburton, and I think he's shown consistently. Let's go back to his college tape, same side of the floor. Finds his shooter. It's nothing like you said. This doesn't look that crazy necessarily. It is a more difficult pass than you probably want to give it credit for. Halliburton breaks the defense. He's not coming off a screen. Same side. He's able to make the read because he has the court awareness to know where his shooters are. very similar scenario here. Let's go back a little bit. Lonzo Ball, another guy that you mentioned, another guy I mentioned in my article. Lonzo's going to come. He's going to reject the screen, but same collapses the defense, finds his shooter, weak side of the court. He knows where his guys are. Now, Lonzo in the NBA is not necessarily a guy who like pressured the rim a ton in the half court, right? He's much more of a transition piece, a guy who's a connective piece, a connective tissue. And I think Ant Black has a lot of that in him. The title of my piece was Ant Black Connects the Dots. And this is much more of a creation thing that he, does from time to time. But you see the similarities in these kinds of passes, right? And we'll go back to the clip with Ant Black. It's very, very similar stuff.
Yeah. And Corey, the thing that if we just focus on this one clip here, the thing that I like that you mentioned is, and you wrote about this in your piece too, Ant Black, the rim pressure with him is insane. If you've ever played pickup, and they're just some guys that they just get to the rim at will, and they do it a lot, and they're really good at it. And that's kind of Ant Black, where he's so good at attacking the rim and coming off that screen. He just takes one step towards the rim, and that defender, he's scared. He has to step up, right? And Ant Black, he knows that. He knows what his gravity is. We talk about shooting gravity all the time. His rim pressure stuff is electric. And so as he's getting downhill, for him, I think he already knows. Like, he knows he's going to get by off the screen. He knows he's going to take one step in, and the weak side help is going to come. And it's just an easy pass for him. And Corey, like you said, this doesn't look like the most advanced, most special pass. I mean, maybe draft Twitter, most of draft Twitter would lose their minds over a pass like this, right? Weak side corner hit. But just a really good pass. And he does a really good job of leveraging that rim pressure, his ability to get to the rim and finish at the rim, which we'll talk about later. All of that really helps. And this is a high level read, really good pass, and one that he makes consistently, which I think also needs to be focused on as well, because we can highlight one or two that a guy might make, but he does it all the time. And I think that's important for us to emphasize as well.
Yeah, and that rim pressure is something he's able to generate with a shaky jumper.
Yeah.
Right? He's still able to get to his spots. He doesn't look like he's the quickest, burstiest guy, but he kind of is, and he's strong and he's big and he's tall. So when he does get downhill, he can make these hard passes. In this clip that we're watching now, he's starting out on the right side, on the right wing, little jab step, uses his burst to get to his spot. And then not only can he see over the defense, but he uses a little jump pass to, give that extra space that he uses to create, which is something that some people might complain about. But I think when you have such high feel and you know what you're doing and you know where guys are, that jump pass could be a weapon. Who's a guy that loves utilizing that jump pass? Tyrese Halliburton, same thing. Right wing, gets in the air, collapses the defense, finds a shooter on the weak side wing. This is something, one of the things when I was doing this piece on Anthony Black, and I was looking at Halliburton's college tape, I can't believe that I didn't have Halliburton high. This dude was so fucking good in college, and I'm just like, why didn't I think any of this was going to translate? Like, it was so clearly in my head about some of the shot creation stuff, because I also bought him as a shooter. I just don't know how I didn't have this guy higher, how he went where he did. He was so clearly going to be the player that he turned into. Looking back, I don't think that it's as much of a surprise, but this particular play here, very similar to the Anthony Black clip that we showed, and we'll throw back on the screen.
Corey, I just knew heading into this pod that we would talk about Halliburton because you mentioned him in your piece, and he's a guy that that I talk about all the time that I'm completely whiffed on. He was a guy that I was concerned about the shot, which was dumb because it went in all the time when he was in college too. And as you've mentioned many times since then, at the top, it looked fantastic, even though, there are some quirky things about his shot. And it feels terrible even now, but we were still learning and, getting better at being evaluators. I don't know, Corey. I think maybe we just missed, but I will say, Corey, watching Anthony Black and thinking back and reading your article and all the clips that you posted of Halliburton, I feel like Anthony Black is one guy that I don't think we're going to miss on. I think he's someone that we're pretty accurate in saying that he's going to be pretty damn good in the NBA. Now, of course, do you want to say, as you've mentioned already as well, his shooting is not anywhere near Halliburton's shooting was and is
No.
now. But the caveat is that he did in college at least, and I think he will in the NBA. His rim pressure stuff was amazing, Corey, and I know I
Yeah.
mentioned it before, and you talked about it now. But also, like, part of that was he's so good with the speeds. He's such a savvy guy, a guy that knows how to mix up speeds and use his burst to his advantage. And he's not a one speed only guy, right? He knows how to mix things up and keep people on their heels. So I think just want to say, man, now you're playing a clip. Okay, this is fun. Yep. Sick pick and roll, sick pass on the inside. And that's this is some of more the highlight worthy stuff that's really awesome with him, right? But yeah, I'll let you go. But this is really, really sick pass here.
Yeah, but it's sick, but it's something that I want to show because it's something that I think he's going to be able to utilize in the NBA. It's his height. It's him being really tall, being able to see over the double team. When that big is showing, he doesn't have to panic because he could see over the defense because he is tall. And in doing so, there's no help at the rim. He fires a perfect ball and he's able to, get his roll man a really easy bucket at the hoop. And that's something that, we see all the time. The best passers, and you look at his assist numbers and they don't blow you away, but it's college, and he shared the ball handling duties with other guards and, it's a whole thing. But you just watch the tape and you're like, this is a high level, high feel passer. And it's stuff like this that's really encouraging because, again, we see it from a lot of guys who have had success in the NBA. Halliburton here, sees over the top of the defense, hits his roll man, right? Very similar in the way they did it. Big steps up a little bit later. He's kind of in a drop, but like Halliburton's tall for, a guard as well. And that helps him, deal with maybe some of the worries that we had for him. We see Lonzo here, same thing, tall guy, doesn't have to panic necessarily, can see over the defense, get the ball to where he has to go. He's got good feel, good timing. He can fit it right there. That's the kind of stuff that we see from Ant Black.
Yeah, no, and Corey, we've mentioned it already, but the accuracy with his passing was awesome too. And he measured in at what, 6'5" without shoes?
6'5.5". Yeah. So, figure
Yeah,
probably
6'7".
6'7" in shoes.
Yeah.
His wingspan 6'7.5" wingspan, not alligator arms, but
Sure.
you would have liked if he was like 6'10", 6'11".
Would have been nice. Would have been nice for sure. But I mean, we can live without it. And the thing with him is, you mentioned the height and the size with him. It clearly is to his advantage. And something that I know we're going to talk about later as well is he is a lot more athletic than people I think are giving him credit for. He really is. Now, you mentioned Amen Thompson already, and people be like, dude, Amen is like 10 times an athlete. And I won't argue the fact that Amen is a better athlete, but I don't think that there's a huge gulf in between the two athletes. Anthony Black is very athletic, and you'll see it later when we do some of the rim attack stuff. Like, he can really get up and dunk it on people and stuff. But Corey, I love everything that you said, man. He can clearly read and process over the defense. A guy that, as you mentioned, 0.5 basketball. I'm just watching the Denver Lakers series. They can't stop talking about Jokic, right? And the way that he sees the floor, the way that he processes the game. There's a lot of value to being able to think the game fast, as Corey, you love to say all the time, right? You may not play it all the fast, but if you think the game fast, you're playing fast enough. Or I totally butchered that.
You think the game. If you think the game fast, you can play the game slow.
There it is. Okay, so I was not close. But with Anthony Black, he thinks the game really, really fast. Like a Jokic, I'm not saying he's at the same level, but like a Jokic, he sees the whole floor. He's anticipating things 2-3 steps ahead of time, and he's just a guy that, it feels like it's hard to stop what he's doing because he's thinking the game so fast. So with what you were saying about the height and all that, it really becomes deadly because of also how fast he's thinking the game.
Yeah, and that goes into like him playing with pace, right? You don't always have to feel rushed. Like his teammate Nick Smith, a lot of times, like the game was too fast for him. So he looked sped up. If you look at how he's operating in this possession that we're playing here against Kentucky, as he, comes off this ball screen, he's just playing with the big, just timing it perfectly until his big is then rolling in the paint. And it's hard for the weak side guy. He doesn't know when to commit. He also knows that Ant's perfectly capable of making that weak side corner hit, so he's got to play the split the difference game the right way. But just the way he's up and down, different speeds, different change of pace, perfectly hitting his man. Let's go back to Tyrese Halliburton here. Different speeds. Little drop-off pass right to his man in the middle of the lane. And it just makes it hard for the defense to guard you when you're playing at those different speeds, the stop, start, all of that stuff. So, yeah, you don't have to be this athletic, bursty freak. Obviously, you want a baseline level of athleticism, and, Ant Black has that, and will show some of, his dunks. He a good amount of dunks, got to the free throw line a ton. So obviously he was able to pressure the rim, but just the way that these high level, high IQ guards are able to play with pace and play with the defense and manipulate them, that's the kind of stuff that we see, I think, translating to playoff basketball now, where, when the game slows down, how are you able to manipulate it when it slows down? Because you can't always you can't make it a layup line, like you maybe can at certain times during the regular season or at lower levels. And I think Ant Black is going to have that. And when I think of him in NBA spacing, I think spread court shooters, I think he's going to look just so good in that scenario.
Corey, I do want to say, I think it's really important that we started with the playmaking, because people are going to be really quick to be like, dude, you guys were so critical of Amen Thompson and his shooting. Well, Anthony Black isn't the best shooter either. Why are you guys kind of giving him a pass? I think there is a little, not a difference per se, but I think it's good that we're prefacing the shooting with all of this stuff, because I do feel like he has an answer, if that makes sense. I think he, although there are going to be concerns about his shooting because of what he offers as a passer, what he's doing with his IQ, as you just mentioned, right? How he's manipulating things with his pace and with his smarts, and just the timing of it. Sorry, excuse me. With all the timing stuff, I think it really does kind of help with the concerns with his shooting. Right, the rim pressure stuff is really, really important. The pace that he plays with, really important. Also, we haven't talked about. Well, we're gonna talk about it later more, but his off-ball stuff is good too, where he may not offer a ton as a shooter, but he's a good cutter off the ball as well. Yep. So, I just kind of want to preface all that, all we're about to say later about the shooting, by saying he's less of a concern for me with his lack of shooting because of all the stuff that we're talking about right now.
For sure. Quick processor, he has a good court awareness even when he's off the ball. Right here, we mentioned the 0.5 basketball, the quick decisions. We see the same thing. It's split screen with Halliburton, ball fired at the top of the key, and it takes literally a half a second for Halliburton and Anthony Black in the clip to figure out that somebody's open as the defense is rotating, and it's a quick decision. If the decision is thought out any longer, that ball is a turnover, but right to where it goes right where it needs to be. That's really, really high level stuff. And, one more, you mentioned just the unselfishness. Yeah, everything might not be flashy, but he's a guy who's just going to make the quick decision and the easy play. And this last clip here of his playmaking split with Halliburton is just making the one more pass to the corner where, yeah, might be a good shot from Halliburton or Anthony Black here, but they turned it into a great shot because the guys that are the one pass away, they're wide open. So they're guys that are going to turn good to great. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is really, really important when, we're talking about, these guys as NBA prospects, as playmakers. You want guys who are going to get you great looks.
Yeah, and Corey, when we're talking about basketball at the highest level, even the smallest of margins mean a ton. I mean, that's essentially what you're looking for when we're talking about the top 1% of basketball on planet Earth, right? Every small margin, every little advantage that you can find is really, really important. And I think what we're talking about here with Anthony Black, right, and his ability to make these taking what, as you mentioned, right, a good look, turning that into a great look may feel like a small margin, but means a lot in the NBA, and it's something that you see consistently in the NBA. And the play that you showed before with the bullet passes, the point five stuff. If you watch any Indiana Pacers basketball, that's the type of stuff that Halliburton's doing all the time, even now. It wasn't a college exclusive thing where he tapped into some Stephon Marbury, Jason Williams energy. He does it all the time in the NBA as well, and is really, really important to his success. So just wanted to throw that in there. Like, ultimately, we're talking about the highest level of basketball on planet Earth, and any margin of advantage you can find is worth a ton. And I think Anthony Black's going to offer that with his playmaking.
Yeah, undoubtedly. All right, let's talk about the shooting. All right, because the rim pressure's great, the playmaking's great, the defense is going to be great. Ultimately, his ceiling will be dictated by what kind of level he can get to as a shooter. Now, in the preseason, we were like, I think it's workable, right? It's not completely broken. There's a good amount of moving parts, but each part isn't necessarily like it's disjointed, but each part is kind of fine on its own. But because the shot is what it is, teams are going to be fine going under ball screens, and he's gonna the big challenge for him is gonna be like, hey, can this guy make teams pay when they go under?
I want to say, for all the crap that I've given Amen Thompson and his shooting, Anthony Black had some of the roughest misses I've seen from any prospect this season. And I want to throw that in there. And I'm trying to be fair, right? He did have some really, really gnarly misses. But I think, Corey, what you said in terms of the mechanics of his shot and everything kind of being disconnected, disjointed, I think that is the main issue that we have here. In terms of like the mechanics, I think the biggest thing that I saw, Corey, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought a lot of times his base was really inconsistent. I thought sometimes it was wide, sometimes it was narrow, sometimes it was just right. I thought it was kind of all over the place. I've seen in other places people mention that he does shoot the ball like in front of his face a little bit. But I don't know, Corey. At the same time, when it goes in, it looks really good. But I mean, that's also the case for most people. Like, if the ball goes in, everything's going to look a lot better.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, it depends. I think, like you mentioned, with some fine tuning and a little bit of a nicer connection between his lower half and upper half and everything, I think there's potential for him to be decent. Is where I think I'm at right now.
Yeah, I don't. He's never going to be Steph Curry, but I think that there's enough there with his form that he could get to an adequate level enough that even if you go under, he could at least make you pay sometimes, right? Like, if you're gonna completely treat him like a non-shooter, I think the one of the things that was encouraging about him is that he was willing to take the shots. There were a lot of times that other guys in this draft, guys would go under, and it would take a lot to actually get that guy to shoot the ball. Anthony Black is a willing shooter, and that means something, because, like here, if you knock this shot down, all right, next time, maybe you don't go under, or if you do, maybe you try to get out a little bit quicker, and, he's smart enough to kind of take advantage. But yeah, I do think his base is inconsistent at times. I think his footwork, sometimes it's like a 1-2, sometimes it's like a choppy, like hop step. And he's just got to really fine tune stuff. But, I think ultimately the off the bounce stuff is really going to come down to just like, is he going to be able to make guys, treat him like they need to defend him, and can he punish unders every once in a while? Because I don't think it's going to be a lot of that. I think mostly what it's going to be is he's going to need to be a guy who I think is ultimately playing with like other ball handlers. And he's going to have to make them pay in catch and shoot situations. Now, he was a 30% shooter from three on the year on, fairly low volume. He was only 32.2% on catch and shoot shots, but 36% on unguarded, which is not great, but
not the worst.
It's not the worst. You wish it was better, but given, the other tools he has, it's something that you can work with because he's not a finished product. And, I think, you look at a shot like this, which is just a basic spot up shot, and you're like, all right, great. Like, that's simple enough. But he also would show stuff like this from time to time where this is kind of like Steph Curry-ish, where, he's, not to compare him to Steph here, but just the play type and the way, if the clip that we're playing against LSU, he drives baseline, makes a kick to the weak side of the floor, and then relocates to the corner and doesn't hesitate and just lets it fly. Like, if he could do that consistently, that's a game changer for him.
Corey, I think the main point that you're making here with this shot that I think is really important with Anthony Black, which I think leaves us being more optimistic with him, is that he's supremely confident in his game. You mentioned it. He's not afraid to take shots. But that confidence means a lot because what do old school coaches say all the time, right? Shooting is all about confidence. And he's a guy that believes in himself clearly. I mean, that shot that you just showed against LSU, not everyone's taking that shot. The relocation was perfect, but also just he shoots it right away. There's no hesitation. No thought. He's like, dude, I'm going to bang this three. And he absolutely does. And I think that's a really important thing, Corey, because we talk about it all the time when we evaluate shooting. We don't care so much about guys who take a lot of shots and have lower percentages. We do worry more about guys that have lower percentages that didn't take a lot of shots, right? That confidence factor does mean a ton. And I think obviously to go with the eye test and everything else, but with Anthony Black, clearly there are things to work on. And I think, Corey, you and I are pretty unified in saying that I don't think either one of us are saying that this is like a 1-year fix. I think his shooting's going to take, it's going to take time. Could be 2-3 seasons later. Really makes me wonder. And Corey, I actually have a question that I wanted to ask. Before the draft where Josh Giddey got taken, how did you feel about his we did a pod. I just don't remember what you said, but how did you feel about his shooting heading into the draft?
Yeah, I don't remember how I broke it down specifically, but I honestly probably feel kind of similar to how I feel about Anthony Black's. Like, it was like, it's like the release is a little low,
right?
But like, and he just looks weird because he's like kind of stiff-ish, like he doesn't have that like natural like yoga flexibility. But I think it was like, all right, like this is going to be workable to a point. Now, the OKC Thunder hiring Chip England was something I also didn't account for. But I don't think it was broken by any means. And also, I think at that time, I don't think we obviously didn't pay enough attention to Josh Giddey, but we also didn't have the tools at our disposal that we have now. Like it was much harder for us to find his game film, that NBL film, where now we have like access to Synergy, and we were scourging like YouTube at the time, and there were only a few games. So I think we have a larger sample to like kind of really break down Ant Black stuff than we did Giddey's. But even at the time, it was like you knew the passing was enough, and the shot form was workable enough that you're like, this is a guy who's going to go high. I even on a podcast, I believe it was a Knicks podcast, I predicted that the OKC Thunder were going to take him at 6, right? So Ant Black is another guy, like we said at the top of the show, that I could see something similar happening with him, where we're all predicting, Cam Whitmore going to Detroit, but it's like they take Ant Black instead because they're over the Killian experiment or something. Yeah, and I'm not predicting that, but I'm saying something weird like that could happen on draft night with Ant because he's got the pedigree, he's got the tools, he's got the stuff that I think coaches are going to love, front offices are going to love. And the thing that I'll say about Ant Black,
sure,
we've had the privilege of speaking with other players. that have played against a bunch of guys in this draft class. And Ant Black is the guy that when I speak to players, they're like, yo, that kid fucking goes.
Hmm.
He's the guy out of all the guys that all of the players are like, he hoops. That kid is the real deal. He's tough to deal with. So, when you have the respect of the players like that, that's, another kind of little piece of the evaluation that you're like, look, sometimes players are not good evaluators, but like these college kids, Ant Black's the guy that they think could really play, especially from that team that has a lot of NBA prospects on it.
Yeah, and Corey, the reason why I brought up the whole Giddy talk was as we were talking about Anthony Black shooting, it really reminded me of that time and the questions that we had about Josh Giddey and his shooting, and they weren't like, we were asking critical questions, but it wasn't a thing where we doubted it. Like I think we truly believed that he was going to figure it out. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think we're feeling the same about Anthony Black. I think Anthony Black clearly has things that he has to clean up, things that he has to tidy up as a shooter, some more consistency in certain areas, mechanics of his shot. But I think you and I both believe that he'll get to a decent level. And you watch Josh Giddey now in the NBA, and his shot has improved. He is a willing shooter from outside. Does it go in all the time? No, but it is an aspect of his game that he does tap into. And I think Anthony Black's going to be that type of player as well. I think he's going to be able to shoot the ball well enough where it's an actual part of his game. Now, in terms of the mid-range stuff, that stuff really wasn't there a lot, a really low percentage of it, but it looks like you're playing something here. Rejects the screen, coming down, mid-range jumper, looks smooth.
Well, honestly, the mid-range. So he only took 9 mid-range shots.
Exactly. Yeah.
There weren't a lot of them available, but 56% on those mid-range shots. He hit 5 out of the 9. And I got to say, when you watch that part of his game, it's one of the reasons that I feel, kind of confident in him as a shooter, because that's a part of his game that looks a little bit smoother and more put together. Now, maybe a lot of it is because he's doing it off the bounce, and because of the distance, he doesn't need to put as much legs and whatever into it. But some of those possessions, I was like, yo, what? Like, that is like all-star level stuff. This clip I'm playing here, this is about as good as a mid-range possession as you are going to find out of any prospect in this entire draft. It's a masterclass at operating, out of a ball screen and getting to a mid-range shot, from the pick and roll setup to getting into the body of the defender as he recovers to create space, to the side step hop to open up even more space, and then, knocking it down, playing with that big. That big's not going to come out at you and contest your shot because he wants to stop you from pressuring the rim. Well, you got to make him pay. And that it's a master class on operating out of a ball screen to get a mid-range look.
Yeah, Corey, you've mentioned it before. He played on a team where spacing was a little bit tougher. As we saw on Synergy in different places, he only took 9 mid-range jumpers, so it wasn't heavy volume, didn't get to show it off a lot. But you watch a shot like this, and it looks really fluid. It looks natural. It looks good, right? So if this is a part of his game that he's going to have in his bag and get to show off more on the next level, then yeah, you really need to be worried, because this may not be 3-point shooting, but it is outside shooting. And this is a really, really good looking shot. Okay, Snakes pick and roll, nice, really good. It looks, damn, it does look good. It does look good. We're really talking ourselves into his shooting. I'm with you.
No, there's many aspects to shooting. This volume is so low, you can't take anything real from it other than the eye test. And you're like, hey, he looks pretty comfortable doing it. Now, do I think he's going to be a high volume mid-range player? No, but it's definitely something worth considering, to where it's like, if he shows this at the next level, you could at least go, hey, there were flashes that you could buy into, because it looks natural. I mean, again, ball screen, snakes it all the way to the elbow, creating the space. The big, doesn't get out to get a hand up. And by the time the guard recovers from, the screen and the snake action, like, he's at an open spot. And again, like, in an NBA offense, guys are going to be a little bit more nuanced on the offensive end. Like, Nick Smith's just kind of in the way. Like, if you pause the clip here, like, he should be flattening out to the corner, which would force his man to go with him, right? Or if he doesn't go with him, he'd be open in the corner. But instead, he just kind of screams, like, with his hands up to get the ball, and Ant Black doesn't even have as much space as he should have.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes into showing just like the spacing issues that this team played with a lot as well, which makes different aspects of his game, um, pretty fun to think about. So look, this not a real outlook for him, something
Yeah.
that we expect to see a whole lot, but at the same time, it's not like he doesn't have an in-between game because he does get to his floater.
He has a good floater.
Cason Wallace, one of the draft's best defenders, and he uses that little float game, gets into his body, is physical with him, finishes through contact. That's really nice touch. Now, he's not like a crazy touch guy, 36% on floaters, which is good, but it's not like, Kobe Buffkin level. I think, you know what I mean?
Straw there. Yeah.
But you see those flashes of like, he's got the soft touch. I remember one from the FIBA tournament that was like, he came off a screen and he shot it from the right elbow and he floated like a high arcing. I was like, oh, I'm in on Anthony Black. And we were at Summer League in Vegas with the No Ceilings crew. And I was like, yo, we got to watch Anthony Black tape tonight. And it was because of that, that particular floater clip that I was like, we're going to love this dude. And this is the aspect of his pick and roll game when guys are daring him to not, or trying to force him to not get all the way to the rim, he's going to be able to at least get to that floater and use that as a counter for the way guys guard him.
Yeah. And Corey, it's funny you mentioned that because when we did our preseason pod of him, I think we talked so much about the FIBA performance from him. He played so well in that tournament. And you're right, man. He's got really, he has good touch. I will say with him that I like is that he's ambidextrous, has a really strong left hand that he used quite often in college. And I think he's just going to continue to show that. But when you start to combine the toughness, the desire to get to the rim, the ambidexterity, the touch, the athleticism that he has, these are all real tools that he has to get to the rim, to finish, and to draw fouls, something that we talk about a lot, right? I'm with you. I think he's really, really good around the rim. And as you mentioned, the floater looks good. We're looking at one right now. That's a really pretty one.
Yeah. Even on a miss, it's still you see the touch, you see the smarts, the IQ, rejecting the ball screen, not afraid as the big steps up. It's like he knows he's not going to force it and draw a charge. He's going to, confidently get to a little, 2-foot floater from the free throw line. So even on misses, it looks good. It's reason to buy in. So it's like, all right, 36%, not the best, but it is a tool for him to use. Even when he misses, you could at least project that it's something that he's going to improve on going forward.
And Corey, I do want to say the thing that I like about him when he attacked the rim was he had good hang time, drew a lot of fouls with that, was really tough, good about finishing through contact as well. Not that he's like the most physical driver ever, but it was there. He wasn't one of these. Yeah, go ahead.
He's pretty physical, Dan.
Yeah. That's why, he's not shying from the contact ever. And I really like that.
Yeah, and let's get into some of the downhill stuff now. I don't know. He's relentless attacking the rim, and I think he's completely fine with embracing contact.
Yeah.
And that's why he did shoot a good volume of free throws this year. 5.3 free throw attempts a game is a good number, and it's something that I think helped his efficiency a lot. But his free throw rate was over 50%, which is like a very, very, very high end number, right? And you kind of have to contest him at the rim that way, because when he gets downhill, he will yam it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't come to the rim, he gets up. He could one hand, two hands, like he'll go and he'll attack the rim, and he'll try to really throw some shit down.
Yeah. He's not like the most violent of athletes, but he gets up. He gets up plenty good at 6'7", right? With the burst that he has, he definitely gets up. There were a couple of alley-oops he had that were really nice. Baseline dunks, really nice. Taking the contact, like you said. I just, there's a lot to like, man. And it's weird. I feel like well, maybe it's just I haven't heard it. I don't want to like accuse people of not talking about it. Maybe I just straight up haven't heard it. And also, notoriously, I'm not really. I'm not always listening to other people's pods all the time. Maybe I should more. Maybe I need to be more like you, Corey. But no, clearly, like he has a strength to him, a physicality. He likes taking contact. Um, he's good. He's physical. I like
Yeah.
it.
Look at the touch here too.
Yeah.
The pace again. Look at how he's setting the defender up. He's baiting him. It's like jabbing with the little footwork.
Gets right by him too.
Blows by him, soft off the glass. You mentioned earlier too that he has the potential to finish with ambidexterity. This is a good example of that with a left-hand finish. Gets downhill. He's got that that cradle move, to keep the ball away from guards that are digging. Gets it high up. Soft touch with the left hand. He's not Kyrie.
No.
He was a good finisher this year. Now, certainly helps that he got to the free throw line a ton, but 58.3% overall at the rim, 56% in the half court. So he was a good finisher, not elite by any stretch of the imagination. But again, he also played with pretty shitty spacing. So that's something definitely to consider with Ant as a finisher. But I think that he showed, really high level of like versatility in his finishes. Right there, snaking a ball screen, playing with pace, like we talked about. I think on some of his misses, he could kind of like change his shot. Like right here, he's trying to draw contact instead of just trying to like finish through contact. He's trying to bait the defender and get to the line. So he throws up some awkward junk, but that's all the stuff with the ball in his hands. You also mentioned that he's a really sharp cutter, and that feel and court awareness, is the reason that, he's able to make things happen off the ball. And, one of the things that we love about guys as prospects is when they don't need the ball in their hands to get looks, right? And he knows right here that when the defender falls asleep, and he just times the cut perfectly. He fools the defense because thinking that he's going to go to a different action. It's just really, really smart, high IQ stuff, man.
And it's important stuff, Corey. Like we mentioned, like especially considering his weakness right now. And I think we have to call it what it is, a weakness, right? His shooting. Considering that him having this type of off-ball movement, IQ, savvy, all this stuff is really, really important, and it's going to help him, because if he couldn't shoot and wasn't moving like this on the court, then I think we'd be way more concerned, right? But the fact that he does create space and create havoc just by moving around and cutting and stuff, I think this is really important, high IQ stuff that does kind of help alleviate some of the issues with his shooting as an off-ball player. So obviously, as we mentioned, it's going to take him some time to develop that outside shot. And in the meanwhile, he's going to have to continue to be a smart off-ball mover to kind of offset some of the lack of shooting.
110%. And I think that we've went on a deep dive on the offense, and now it's time to hit the defense, right? Because also part of his intrigue is his 2A ability, right? Alan Flanagan here, ISO, hard on the ball, kind of trying to weak him, knows he's a lefty, sends him to, an uncomfortable position. And, Flanagan is by no means a shooter, and he forces him into like a step back 3 off balance thing. Just makes it's not fancy, but it's just really solid stuff. He's down in his stance, gets up on him to pressure him, knows that the clock is low, knows he's going to be able to force him into a tough shot. Good anticipation on the contest. Just a really nice possession.
I think, Corey, what I wrote in my notes was that he was a really annoying defender, a guy that was never afraid to pick up full court, a guy that, as you mentioned, was willing to get into a stance, really active, quick hands, a guy that averaged over 2 steals per game last season. That type of stuff works. That type of stuff plays in the NBA, considering he's 6'7" as well and athletic. Now, as you know, we've mentioned he doesn't have the greatest wingspan on planet Earth, but it's good enough. And the fact that he can move his feet, that he can flip his hips a little bit, that he has that athletic ability, the awareness, all that stuff comes together and creates a really annoying defender. And that's kind of how I characterized him, as I think he was pretty damn annoying, and he caused some problems, and he made life difficult for a lot of ball handlers.
He did. He's also really good at getting vertical and
Oh
using
yeah.
his chest instead of like coming down and swatting down for fouls. And he's slithery. You know, he's got really good feel on the defensive side of the ball. Here he's chasing Jordan Hawkins around for a full possession, you know, staying attached to him. Does a good job getting over. And now he's up in his stance, being annoying, quick hands to pick the ball. I mean, I think he had 5 steals in this UConn game. Jordan Hawkins is not an easy cover. You know, he is the Brad Stevens. He might only average 13 points, but you have to guard him like he's averaging 30, right? When Stevens was talking about Kyle Korver, that's Jordan Hawkins. And he made this entire possession tough from him. He's touching him. He's getting into his body even when he's off the ball, following him around, shadowing him. Just does a really, really, really excellent job. And he just has really quick hands, really, really good anticipation. We see another example of that here against Cason Wallace and Kentucky. One of the things that I noticed about him as a defender, he's really good at playing from behind. So he gets hit
Yes.
with a screen, quick hands, forces the ball, strips it off Cason's knee, and it's going the other way, right? Like he knows when to reach in, and when to take risks, and I think that's a really underrated defensive skill.
And Corey, to piggyback off your point, right? Him being good from playing from behind, he does a really, like, especially against ball screens, he does a really good job of fighting to get over. That's something that I noticed. And look, no one's going to be perfect at that. Yeah, like everyone's going to get nailed by a screen once in a while. But I thought Anthony Black, when we talk about his competitive spirit, right? His desire to be what he is, he's really good at fighting over screens. And you're showing one right now against Baylor guarding Keontae George. This is something that he did all the time, that I really, really enjoyed. I once again, I'm not saying he's the greatest screen navigator of all time, but I thought he did a really good job of being active, right? Being smart about anticipating when the screen's going to come, and really making a concerted effort pretty consistently to get over the top. And as you mentioned, do a good job of playing from behind. And I think this type of stuff is important, because what are you going to see a lot of in the NBA? You're going to see a lot of ball screens. And so if you're going to fight to get over consistently and do a good job of that while being pesky and annoying with your hands, then that's a really, really great skill, which once again also does offset some of the concerns we have about his shooting.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing, he's a really versatile defender in the types of guards that he can guard, right? You know, like we just saw him guarding Keontae on this possession. He's checking Grady Dick, right? He knows that Grady Dick's a shooter, can't really, cheat off of him too much. Screen comes, gets a piece of the contest, sticking through, getting over that screen. I think he did a good job guarding, smaller guards too, as well. Texas A&M, I think it's Wade Baldwin, smaller guard, checking them, right? Gets over the screen, makes it really difficult.
Sick.
Hands high, using his chest to get vertical, isn't swiping down. So I think he's versatile in how he could defend, the different kinds of guys you can actually put him on. I think he's good at chasing. We saw him do it with Hawkins. We'll see him do it again here against Texas A&M. Like, I just think he's really crafty. He spins off guys. He gets through. He's strong enough to take contact. And again, just
How many
straight up
screens?
vertical.
How many screens is he fighting?
He's a really, really good defensive player.
Yeah.
And it's like, the only question is the shooting for me.
Yeah.
And it's not even, and it's a question that I feel confident in, like that he's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be, I don't think the shot's ever going to get to a point where he turns himself into a number one option. But, I also didn't think Tyrese Halliburton was going to do that. So what the fuck do I know?
We know nothing, is the answer to that question. But Corey, I'm with you. I think this is one of the cases where you put everything together, right? You start adding all the pieces and you find out what you have, right? You start getting macro on the type of prospect that we have here. And I think the macro bird's eye view of Anthony Black is a really, really good player, a guy that is going to offer you versatility on both ends of the court. Right now, we're focused on his defense, but obviously, with everything that we said with him on offense, adding that to defense, as you said, Corey, I think he's going to I think consistently, easily, he's going to guard 1 to 3. I think 4s would be really, really tough for him. But I think 1 to 3 he can guard from day one. And if that's the case, then with the passing and the rim stuff, at the rim stuff, that's that stock price of 8 point something starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and it's why I could see a team falling in love with him and him even going higher than that stock price. Because he's got just so many fun aspects to his game. All right. If you're buying stock in Anthony Black, who may you have bought stock in previously, I think, we could figure out mine based on the first half of this podcast. Tyrese Halliburton, a little bit of Lonzo Ball. I also think he's got some, Derek White to him, where, he serves as more of a connector. Derek White has turned himself into a good shooter. Wasn't always a good shooter. Took him a while. Now he's a guy who you feel confident in hitting spot up shots and, does a lot of smart things as a connective piece. That's kind of, the low end, I think, of what Anthony Black projects to be. High end, you could see him as that Lonzo Ball-esque connector. Lonzo, a guy who was a good shooter in college, but we knew that shot probably wasn't going to translate. Didn't translate. Totally rebuilt his shot. Turned himself into a good enough shooter on high volume that he became, basically the reason the Bulls went from a mediocre team to a really, really good team. And since he has been injured, the Bulls have been a really, really mediocre team. So, if he gets his shot to Lonzo's level, obviously we're talking about an elite glue guy connector. And then, if he ever develops any kind of off the bounce game, there's that kind of Halliburton upside, but he was much better at pressuring the rim, attacking than Halliburton. So there is an aspect of his game where you don't have to get to that high level to see him turning into, kind of like an all-star level player. If he could still pressure the rim, get downhill as much as he does while offering all of this stuff, you could see that path for him too. There's a bunch of paths for him to be a really good NBA player. There are just levels to his ceiling that make him really intriguing because I think he could hit a ceiling.
Yeah. Corey, I think this one was a little bit harder for me just because you picked so many good guys in your piece, and then you just did a great job of explaining all that just now. I thought of a guy that, is very recent. A guy who, I generally go 90s, but a guy that just went in the draft last year that went to your team. Dale and Terry, right? They look very different as players, but functionally, I think there is some similarity, right? With the passing and the playmaking and the off-ball stuff and all that stuff. So I thought of Dale and Terry. Also thought of discount generic brand Jason Kidd. I'm not saying that he's at Jason Kidd's level, but we had similar concerns about Jason Kidd. Well, not that I was old enough to even do draft evaluations when Jason Kidd got drafted, but he came into the league, not having the sweetest shooting jumper and all those things, but the playmaking stuff was really high, and the IQ was high, and all that stuff. So those are some names that came to mind. Obviously, not perfect comps, but I think the guys that you picked were really, really solid.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you could see some of the Jason Kidd stuff. Even if he's not going to be a Hall of Fame guard. But, why put a ceiling? We don't do that at no ceilings, right? There's a reason that he is projected to go 8th. That could mean maybe he slips a little bit, or maybe he goes higher than we expect. But the draft is a wild card, and we never know. But I think that whatever team ultimately does land him is going to get a really, really good, interesting player. So with that said, Albert, it's time for you to sell me this pen on Anthony Black.
All right. So I think the best place to start is I think NBA teams like smart players, I really do believe that. I think NBA teams are looking to raise the overall medium IQ of their teams. And I think Anthony Black, where you want to start with him is that he's an incredibly intelligent player, a guy who is a gifted athlete, a guy who can really pass the ball, but his overall awareness, vision, IQ on both ends of the floor is what I think what makes Anthony Black really special. And the cherry on top with him really is his competitive spirit. This is a really smart player, but a really smart player that also plays really, really hard and is afraid of nobody. And so we just gave you over an hour of analysis on his game. But the main point that I want to drive home with our listeners is that he's an extremely intelligent player that is afraid of no one, that is always going to play really, really hard. So if you take all the gifts and talents that he has on a technical level, and you add that to the IQ and the competitive spirit that he has, we're talking about a really, really good player that you probably want to invest a top 10 pick on.
You definitely, I think, want to invest a top 10 pick, potentially higher. What are there any teams that you think, in that top 10 that he would really make better?
So you mentioned one already, the Wizards.
Yep.
What do we think about the Rockets, Corey?
I was going to say the Rockets.
Yeah.
I think we got to start thinking about Anthony Black at as early as number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you don't draft for fit. You draft for talent.
Yes.
And I think that there are 4 players that are clearly more talented than Anthony Black that I have in my own, personally, I have in a different tier.
Yeah.
And that's Victor, Scoot, Brandon Miller, and Jarris Walker. However, I think that after 5 or at 5, for me personally, I think all of those, the rest of those guys are in a very similar tier where I have some serious questions about their games, and I could see them not living up to the new car smell that they have right now. As we're in the dealership and they're looking pretty in the lot.
Yeah.
But as soon as we drive it off the lot, that value goes down. Mm-hmm. I think all of those guys have that kind of potential to, kind of not live up to the hype. And at 4, I think if you're the Rockets, if I'm just like, and look, they're probably going to sign James Harden and the point will be moot. But like theoretically, if they don't get Harden, Anthony Black next to Jalen Green makes so much sense to me. Like you don't want to take, like he's a guy that I think would just make all of the Rockets better. What have we been, has not me personally, but what have most people been clamoring for Jabari Smith for 2 years? What were the excuses as to why he couldn't, create his own shot or whatever? It's, his guards don't know how to find him in his spots. Well, Anthony Black would know how to find him in his spots. Mm-hmm. Jalen Green, 6'3", 6'4" guard, sleight of frame, makes a lot of sense to put a big initiator next to him. A lot of people are probably saying, that sounds like Amen Thompson. Maybe it will be. But we're talking about Anthony Black. A guy who could pressure the rim, who's a good defender, who would push the pace. He would be a lot of fun for a lot of the same reasons that Amen would. Anthony Black would make a lot of sense in Houston.
Corey, I just want to say, like, we talk about high IQ stuff. Like, can you imagine some of the basketball sex they would create with Alperon Şengün and Anthony Black together doing stuff? And Corey, I absolutely freaking love what you're saying right now, because it goes to my point that I've been making now for about a week, in that don't freaking fall for the groupthink shit. Like, just because you keep seeing certain names at a certain level or a certain tier on 50 different mock drafts and big boards doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen the day of. Like, I want to really nail that point, because that's something that I continue to remind myself of all the time, because I see our mock drafts, our big boards. I look at different outlets and what they're doing, and I have to continue to remind myself, just because I see a certain player in a certain range doesn't mean that player is going to go in that range. So just because you see Amen Thompson going to the Rockets in every other mock draft doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, guys. And I want to just kind of throw that out there again.
Yeah, because look, teams have their own boards, and at the end of the day, like all it takes is one decision maker on a team to go rogue and throw off everybody else's board.
Yep.
Like the evaluators in the room aren't looking at these mocks and going, well, this guy is mocked 6th, or Cam Whitmore's mocked 5th to the Pistons. So we got to take Cam Whitmore if he's on the board. Like, they don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, they all have been evaluating these guys for far longer than you could imagine. Like, they have been watching these guys since they were kids in high school. They know these guys' games. They have their own feelings towards these guys. They're not necessarily getting swayed by the mock drafts. Now, maybe an owner who isn't paying attention and doing that work, maybe they're getting swayed by a mock draft in certain scenarios, but like probably not the owners, at this part of the draft with Anthony Black. So I think that he'd be great in Houston. I think he'd be great in Utah at 9. I think he'd help the Wizards a little bit if they're going to continue going on their trajectory. But I just love his game. I think he's going to be really valuable. And he's going to be a guy that, we think of, and he's on a lot of winning teams.
The final expert analysis point we'll give you guys is that we think Anthony Black is really good at basketball.
Sometimes that's all it takes, man. All right. We have a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline in the No Ceilings world. So stay locked into the social medias at No Ceilings NBA. Make sure you subscribe to NoCeilingsNBA.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you give us a like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on your podcast feed, make sure you subscribe, share, rate, and review. 5 stars really helps your boys out. And again, a lot of good stuff over the next month. So stay locked in. You do not want to miss it. Albert, tell the good people of the World Wide Web where they can find you.
You can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter. You can find me at GTG NBA on Instagram. Before we go, I wanted to give a special shout out to Kevin Park from a Bit NYC clothing brand. He hooked me up with this beautiful hoodie. I'm trying to show off the design here that he
Embroidered?
This is embroidered. It is stunning. This is a beautiful, beautiful hoodie. Does incredible work. Check out a bit NYC on Instagram, I believe is the handle. But he's creating some really, really beautiful pieces. And I told him I'd give him a shout out on the pod. So wanted to do that to close.
Shout out to a Bit NYC. You can follow me at Corey Tulaba, NBA Draft Dude, on all the things. And until next time, guys, where I think we're going to have an exciting episode. But, we'll see. We'll see. Keep you on your toes. Until next time, guys, we're out. Peace.
Peace.